Am I the asshole? For telling my disabled friend that not everything should have wheelchair access. I am 25. I'm taking my friend's MMFF 24-27 around New Zealand. I live here. One of them, F27, is editor, wheelchair user, and is a big disabled rights advocate. Won't say her name, but she has a following on TikTok, Insta. She's made this her whole brand back home UK. FYI, she calls herself disabled, not differently abled, etc. We planned this 3-week trip with activities that are disabled friendly. Absolutely fine. We all love wine tastings, walks, boat cruises, etc. with one exception. 3 of us wanted to do the famous Tongariro Alpine crossing. It's 8 hours over rocky terrain and 1,200 meters of elevation change. None of it is wheelchair friendly. Before the trip, we cleared this with her, and she was fine with it because there were smaller, flat walks she could do with our other friend who had no interest in the full hike. But she changed her mind whilst we were prepping wide-day evening and wanted to do the full crossing. We did gently talk her out of it. I've done it once, explained how harsh it is, but she spent the next 90 minutes grumbling it's so unfair that it's not wheelchair accessible. If it's a tourist attraction, it shouldn't be hard to add wheelchair access. I'm going to tell my followers to complain. It's discriminatory, and then if it allows just one disabled person to experience it, it's worth any construction. We kept mumbling yep whilst we packed to keep her happy, but then she said, it's not hard to add a cable car to the top. I sort of just snapped and said, it's literally a volcanic zone and a place of natural beauty. No one is adding a cable car. I followed up with, here's where I may have been the a-hole. I know this is your whole thing, but not everything should have wheelchair access. She just stared and then said, well, I guess now I know who's secretly ableist, and then went to her room. I felt bad, but everyone just kept packing because it was late. We 3 left at 5:30 a.m. successfully completed the crossing today, but she isn't talking to me or the other 2 because they didn't defend her, and now it's awkward. I think it's insanely entitled and unrealistic for her to complain Tongariro isn't wheelchair accessible and demand it be made so, but maybe I phrased it too harshly. Am I the asshole? Edit changed word bound to user shouldn't have used it. Nta. My son is in a wheelchair and will never walk. Where we live there are beautiful mountains, but in reality I'll never be able to get him to the summit of these places. Anything natural is just that, not built or designed. Anything man-made should be built with access in mind. Your sentiments were correct, but maybe your delivery could have been a touch better. Not the asshole. It's unrealistic to make a 8-hour rough terrain hike wheelchair accessible. How would that even work? A skywalk cable cars would be cool to overlook natural beauty areas. We have some where I live, but again, it's a volcano. I don't live in volcano areas, so I might be dead wrong, but I don't think a cable car over a volcano is feasible. You could have said it nicer, yes. Not the asshole. Hello, fellow Kiwi. You're not the asshole. I would understand if you were going around Wellington or Auckland, and there were places that weren't accessible for her. But it's fucking Tongariro crossing. Like the most stunning, beautiful nature walk. You can't even ride a bike there. There are tons of other walking tracks she could do with her chair. I actually cringed at the part about the cable cart. Buildings, roads, and sidewalks should be accessible, not raw nature. Not the asshole. It's not discrimination. We are talking about hiking in the mountains. Of course it's not mandatory to be wheelchair friendly. Does she also expect that climbing in the mountains should be wheelchair friendly? I am sorry to say, but I think you're the asshole. Solely because of the words you used. Oh, everything should. The use of the word should is wrong here. Everything should have wheelchair access, but unfortunately, that is not possible. You seem to have a bit of prejudice because of your disabled friend's militant attitude, but to change things, we also need militant people like her. I hope you two can work it out. You're the asshole. You're right, she can't really expect volcanic mountains to be wheelchair accessible, but the way you delivered it was very hurtful. I know it's your thing, but is very condescending. Of course she was upset with you. The friend who changed their mind last minute is an AH2. Is she just going to be on her own now? Not the asshole, but empathy goes a long way when delivering your opinion. Not the asshole, I'm not a wheelchair user, but I am disabled, I have a badge to park, etc. I read your title and was fully prepared to rip you a new one. But nature absolutely should not be destroyed because it's inaccessible. Everything man-made should be made with accessibility in mind, but you can't make Tongariro wheelchair accessible. I'll never be able to do it either, but that's just life. When I was 4, my old man carried me up a mountain. Tell her us Kiwis will carry her if she pays us enough. 1,000 per hour. Not the asshole. Goodness, I'd struggle to manage to walk the Tongariro crossing, and I'm an able-bodied young woman. Unfortunately, some places are not suited to wheelchair-bound people, and rough volcanic terrain in a national park is one such place. I am in a wheelchair and agree that most things should be wheelchair accessible. However, some things cannot be made wheelchair accessible without ruining them or making them unsafe. I lived in a small town where the library had the bathroom on the ground floor and you had to leave the building to access it. That should have been made accessible for the disabled and elderly IMO. A national park is automatically going to have some inaccessible areas. Your wording should have been everything cannot be wheelchair accessible, not should not. Esh. Obviously her suggestion is ridiculous. I'm disabled and this isn't a top agenda item for access needs. It's weird to get caught up on this of all things. But some degree of accessibility like a viewing area or something would be reasonable and wouldn't take away from the natural beauty. Your comment was also AH-ish, as you suspected. You're fine for getting frustrated, but yeah, you crossed a line. As a fellow Kiwi, you're the asshole for adding the not everything should have wheelchair access crack. That was plain nasty and, yes, ableist. Not everything can have wheelchair access, and that includes the Tongariro crossing, IMO. However, everything that can have wheelchair access should have it. Apologize to your friend when you get back. I get that somewhere like that isn't going to be able to be accessible to everyone. However, you're the asshole for what you said to her. You are not in her shoes and will never understand what it's like to deal with the issues she faces. You should have either kept your mouth shut or sympathized with her to make her feel understood. Esh. She had every right to feel upset about not being included. Still, she should have reined it in after a comment or two instead of going on and on. It's understandable you were frustrated with her tirade. At the same time, you could have phrased it better. After all, she's frustrated too that yet another thing is unavailable to her. For all the people saying NTA but making excuses. If the action is shitty, even if the point is good, it's an AH move. Is she also angry that the summit of Mount Everest is not wheelchair friendly? Good grief. Be nicer to your friends. It's literally her whole thing. She literally cannot move conveniently without a wheelchair. You don't have to deal with that struggle every day. I'm sorry it's annoying, and not the asshole for saying nature cannot accommodate her, but you could have said something that wasn't demeaning. You became TA once you said, I know this is your thing, but not everything needs wheelchair access. If you had just omitted that line you would have came across as more of an ally to her. Not the asshole. We all have things we can't do and places we can't go. That's just how life is. No amount of fussing is going to change that. A fact which your friend needs to realize and learn to accept instead of throwing a hissy fit. Calling her disability her thing, you're the asshole. All these people so harsh about the disabled friend really need to remember that this is the only minority group that anyone at any time can and will become a member. Many of you will join that community eventually and you too will be restricted to access much of society. As a recently disabled person, this whole thread is disappointing and a harsh reminder of larger societal impatience and dismissive attitude towards the disabled. The struggle to physically navigate is an emotional fight too. I see you and it's heartbreaking. Do you see me?